Hi guys, this is Jackie Cooper from JCooperTravels, and I'm so excited today to bring you another great topic, which is all about financial planning, both personally as well as for your business. And I have Scott Johnson, who's here, who's going to give us some tips and tricks on how to be financially healthy. Scott, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your great wisdom today.
Thank you for having me.
So, would you share with our listeners a little bit more about the company that you're with, how you got started? Because I know your journey, you're multi-talented and you have more than one business, and you're definitely doing this because of how it helps people.
Yes, exactly. I never thought, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I think I want to be in the insurance business when I grow up, or even a financial business. I started, well, I'm not going to go where I started because that'd be more time than we have. But I've been retired about 12 years. So I have another business where I manage some websites in the morning, and I was recruited. Someone came to me. I've been doing some mentoring, reading some books, and going over that. But independent of that, someone else came up to me and said, "Hey, I think you would be good here." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And they said, "Well, it's insurance." And I said, "Life insurance." I said, "No, I don't think so." My wife and I bought life insurance about 40 years ago and didn't pay attention to it and didn't watch it. And we were told at the time that when I turned 65, then we would have a bundle of cash there waiting for us because it wasn't a term insurance. It was a life insurance. I think it was whole life. I don't even know what it was. That's how much I paid attention to it. So I said, no, I don't think I don't want to do anything but term. I think everything else is bunk, and I'm not going to do it. And she was very nice and very patient. She understood, and she explained how insurance has changed in the 40 years, and indeed it has. And I still kind of drug my feet, but I went along and I joined. This was in August. I got my license here in California in October, beginning of October. There were some snags, as there often is in licensing. And so, anyway, I've been doing that since and learning as I go and wondering why at first. Well, yeah, I had some debt because my wife and I have not been smart financially, and it gradually dawned on me that why I'm doing this, yeah, on a practical level, it's to help with our family finances, but on a real level, it's so that my son, my daughter-in-law, other family, other friends, other people I know don't make the same mistake. And all last spring, as I went through and worked with families as part of my training, I I found that they were all vulnerable to the market. They didn't realize that they had 401ks, and if they were like us, they weren't paying attention. It was just you start working here and you sign the dotted line. The HR comes by and gives you, and you're fine. And this is where your money goes, and then you roll it over into an IRA when you leave the job, or if you want, and whatever. But didn't realize how close it was tied to the market and how vulnerable things were, and we looked at charts, and charts used to put me to sleep, but saw this thing happening where since 2009, which to me just seemed like yesterday, it had been really a long time since there was a correction and things had really gone straight up, and that we were in bad shape, and things were about to happen, and these people, were doing the same thing we had done. And yeah, you take a loss and you rebuild from it. So what? But when I realized that it wasn't that simple, that it takes a lot of percentage points to get back. When you lose 50%, it takes 100% to get back. And meanwhile, if you've gained that 100%, the person who didn't lose the money, they're way ahead of you. So you really don't get back after a 50% loss with some time. So just relearning finances and looking back over the other mistakes my wife and I made. We would have windfalls from time to time, and we would spend that. We wouldn't spend it foolishly, but we put it in the house or something. But we never put it in savings. We always lived paycheck to paycheck. It was scary. It was stressful. So my why, if you will, on a deeper level, has become kind of a redemption, going back and helping other people avoid the sort of problems that have stressed my wife and stressed us till this day. We've been married 45 years, and it's been a good 45 years in all respects, except for our continual worry about money, and something happens of what happened last fall while I was in the middle of important training uh, was uh, the water heater went out. It was $3,000, just like that. On a Saturday afternoon, I had to come home from the office and deal with that for a couple of hours. It wasn't fun. Uh, and it didn't have to be that way if we had been financially smarter. So that's why I'm here.
So I know that for a quick second I had my sound off, so I apologize. So what I wanted to share is that what you have been saying is so relevant to everyone because of the fact that as you go through your life, you are presented with certain information, and you don't always see the relevance of it down the road, and how it impacts you. I know as a teacher, I've had multiple careers, and one of the things that I'm doing right now as a teacher is you are presented with information, and so you sometimes you take the advice of individuals, and you don't do your own research. But it is really important, especially to become knowledgeable about financial literacy. And I know that I was looking at the checklist that you've created. And there were 5 areas that I thought were really relevant for everyone to kind of think about for their own financial health. And the first area that I saw that you had listed was the debt area. So can you talk a little bit more about those 5, I'll call them pain points, because those are things that we all need to be thinking about, but we might deal with each area one at a time instead of looking at the whole package.
Right. And I think we call them 5 pillars of financial stability. Uh, if you have each of these in control or understood, or you're dealing with them over time in a constructive way, then they become the, the they're what sets you free financially, if you will. Uh, so debt is a terrible thing that we have in this country. It's something that my wife and I have fought with. Not It's never been huge debt. We've always paid our cars off, and we have our mortgage, and that's a debt. But we had 25,000 or so of credit card debt a year ago, and the average in this country currently is around, well, before March it was. I don't know what it is now, but the average was around 30,000. And that's a lot of credit card debt to have. And I want to make a distinction between 2 kinds of debt. There's controlled debt and out of control debt, or uncontrolled debt. Controlled debt is something like a mortgage or a car loan, where you know when it's going to get paid off. You know the car loan's going to get paid off in 4 years or 6 years, whatever, and a mortgage in 30 if you don't refinance. But then the uncontrolled debt is God forbid, medical bills, which don't have an end date on them, or credit card. Uh, Credit cards are a terrible thing from a financial perspective. Um, you put money in the bank and you get, if you're lucky, 1%. But I don't think, you think you got a good deal if you get 1% on something you're saving in the money market these days. But what do the banks do with that? They put that away. The average interest rate they get on credit card debt is 18%, 19%, I think it is. Um, and that doesn't, mortgage, they get a little bit less than that. Well, they get quite a bit less these days, but still, it's a lot more. They're making a lot of money. And it's costing us when we use our credit cards, we're coming out the short end. So, getting off on a tangent there, but uh, that's that's where the debt gets built up when we're not planning ahead, we're not saving, and so forth. Uh, it's really easy to use credit cards, and I know a friend has a motto that if you have to use credit card, that means you don't have enough money for it. Uh, so those are the debts. What we have is a service that we refer to National Debt Relief, and uh, if you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt or that sort of debt, then they will help you with it. They'll negotiate with who you owe the money to, and you'll end up with usually about 50% less, and usually the interest rate will come down to between 2 and 3%. Rarely it'll go all the way down to 0% in really bad cases. Uh, and then your payments will go way down also. It's a bit of a it takes a while, it takes a couple of years to get all that in control, but they will do that for you. They'll do the negotiating. They did it for us, and it's be a little while before we got it all paid off. But when we're done, then we'll be free of all that debt. So it's a good thing that we do, uh, and that's one of our services.
So the other thing that I saw on our list that you showed me was the importance of life insurance. Uh,
Mm,
and there were like three other areas as well.
yeah, life insurance, retirement, college funding if you have young children, and then emergency savings are the five pillars or the five pain points. Either way, you want to see it, uh, and I think for us they're pain points. And in our family they were. So in retirement, uh, I think I'm going to look at that. Well, life insurance is the next one because we think that's really the most important. If you're going to pick one area, and what we do with the families, we sit down. These are free services. We don't charge our clients any money at all. We sit down with them as part of our training. We're always bringing new people on, and they want to meet with families in real person to see how the presentations go. And so we'll sit down and we'll go through this checklist with them. And I'm looking at a different monitor here that has that information on it. And the life insurance uh, is the pillar because if I'm the breadwinner of our family, I've got kids, I've got my wife, I've got home and so forth. We have all the usual sort of debts and issues and so forth. But I'm bringing in, say, average of 30,000 a year for 30 years or so between the time I start work and the time I retire. That's close to $1 million, and we'll have insurance on our mortgage and we'll have insurance on our car. But if God forbid something were to happen to me while I'm still in the breadwinning years, uh, then that's going to be hard for the family to make up that money. So I think life insurance, if you don't have life insurance and something bad happens, then the debts are going to get bad. College isn't going to get funded. Obviously, the emergency fund is gone, and retirement's going to take a hit too. So that's the key, I believe.
So with our listeners, how would what are the steps if they reach out to you? Do you do like a consultation, or explain a little bit more about the process so that way people will feel comfortable reaching out to you for your service?
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, they would contact me by the information you have there, and I would set up an appointment with them. We would do it on Zoom. We're doing everything remote these days. It could be from any place in the United States. We're in San Diego, but it could be any place in the United States. And set up an hour appointment, and we'd like it be with the husband and the wife, so it's realistic for the training. And say if I'm being trained, then I would be there with my trainer. There'd be the two of us. And once we, sat down and got to know each other remotely, of course, then uh, he would uh, go through his presentation and basically go through an assessment of these five areas with them, and take that time leisurely. We set aside an hour to be devoted. We'd like to have the husband and the wife there, so it's realistic, uh, and because they, one person's there, but then they decide, well, I got to talk to the other person. Well, that's not a realistic sort of situation. They need both to be there. So we'll do that, and then we'll go through these five areas and take our time with them, answer their questions. We'll go through the assessment, then we'll go back after we've gone through the assessment with them, gone over with them how they are with retirement, how they are with all their life insurance, their debt, and so forth, and then ask them each which areas are most interesting to them, or which areas they think they need to work on, or so forth, and then go back and spend some time with them, uh, going over those, answering their questions, and so they get a full, realistic education. It's not a chalkboard education where we're going through in a dry manner and lecturing on each of the five pillars, but we're addressing the ones that are important to them at the time we're meeting with them.
So you mentioned that you're located in San Diego, and have you lived other places, or has San Diego been your primary place of residence?
I've lived all over San Diego. I love San Diego. I didn't at first. My earliest years were up in Washington State in Everett, but we also had family over in the Puget Sound, and I loved being over there. And when we moved down here, I was in the second grade, and I didn't like it, San Diego. There was no trees, there was no streams. It was just a different world. It wasn't all green and lush like I had expected and wanted, and had a resentment for a long time. It wasn't until between undergraduate and graduate school that I took off and joined a circus and traveled around the United States for a couple of years. And each place we visited, I envisioned living there. And it wasn't until I came back to San Diego well, I came back to Southern California for winter quarters up in Thousand Oaks, uh, that I decided I really like San Diego and decided to live there, and I've loved it ever since.
That's great. That's great. So everyone knows that I am in the travel space, and I did share the I Go for Less platform with you.
Yes.
What were you able to go on and kind of check out different places, and what's your next bucket list that you might want to travel once we get the ability to travel around?
Yeah. Yeah. My brother, I don't see very often, maybe once every decade. And he lives now, he used to live in White Salmon, Washington, along the Columbia River Gorge. He was a windsurfer and a skier, and he's still a skier. And now he and his wife have moved over to Sun Valley. And I did go there last fall, flew up to Boise, and then he met us and drove us around to Sun Valley. Loved it there. And so I'd like to go back there regularly. The housing prices have just boomed there and are booming a number of places. And they're thinking he has his children in Seattle, his grandchildren, their grandchildren over there. So uh, they might be moving back to uh, White Salmon area. They're thinking about it. So that's a fun place for me to visit too. Both of them, I love the Columbia River Gorge. So wherever if they stay or if they move, when we can start flying again, then I'd like to fly there.
Yeah, for sure. I
And
mean,
I went on the, I'm sorry, I went on
that's
your
okay.
I went on the iGo site, and it was fun. It was fun. I almost bought a ticket even though I have no plans for this fall. I can't plan at this time to do anything like that, but I came close because it was easy. It was fun. It compared all the different airlines. and that, my time frame, that I envisioned, and all that sort of thing. It was nice. It was really
I'm
nice.
glad you were able to enjoy it. I mean, I know that I've used the platform and I'm getting antsy to be able to travel, just like you said, to different locations, both here in the United States as well as overseas. Um, I truly appreciate your taking the time to talk about this very important area. I know that when I was younger, I didn't think about financial planning, and I'm trying to instill that with my daughter now. And I think that this is an important topic that we also need to teach in schools.
Hmm.
So I do, recommend that everyone who's listening to the podcast, I will be putting both in the text above the podcast as well as on the YouTube channel ways that you can reach out to Scott, as well as by emailing me. You'll be able to get a free tip sheet PDF that we're creating to kind of give you guidance on how to kind of see what areas of need that you have, because financially, it's important for you to both every day to think about your financial health, but also I know oftentimes we use discretionary money for travel, and travel is important, but it is also important to plan for your future too. So, there's a balance. So definitely, any last minute things that you're thinking of, Scott, that you want to add?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the schools. I worked with schools that did grief groups in the adolescent in the secondary schools for 5 years, training counselors how to do that. And then I've made a curriculum. The counselors come back to me for that curriculum every year from different parts of the country. And one did in Florida last year, and she came back this year. We've agreed to work on bringing in financial literacy into that grief group that she's doing with them now, because I learned a long time ago working in psychiatric nursing with adolescents that part of, I think, their problem was they didn't know how to grow up. They didn't know what it meant to write checks, and all that adult stuff that we take for granted. Just not knowing what it was overwhelming to them. So I would like to help anybody that wants help in the schools.
Yep. I mean, it's overwhelming for us as adults, and for sure, as young adults transition from high school to college and then out into the working world, there's a lot of things that we had to learn on the job, so to speak, in real life. And yet, I think that it is important for all of us to mentor others so that way there's less stress and more knowledge, because as we get older, we've learned. And so if someone can learn from our mistakes, all the best.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to talking to you soon.